Welcome to the world away.
Travel tales to inspire your wanderlust. Hey traveller, planning your next overseas trip? Perhaps a little Lux Bali getaway, some high-speed Japanese bullet train action, or maybe you're heading to Vietnam for a feast of fabulous food. Stay in touch with family and friends with a Sailing eSIM. Sailing provides affordable, secure internet around the world without the bill shock when you get back home. To buy your eSIM, simply download the Sailing app in the App Store on your phone and use our code The World Awaits at checkout to get an exclusive 15% off your first purchase. Find out more in the show notes on our website at theworldawaits.au. Welcome back to The World Awaits. I hope you've all had a wonderful week, everyone. How's your week been, Kirstie?
Well, I'm still feeling the golden confetti falling from my tap.
Do you know that? Do you watch? I always watch those golden buzzer moments on like Britain's Got Talent and stuff, and just oh my gosh, I watch them all the time, and I cry. Like I'm not a crier, as you know, I'm not a person that just cries normally, but I do. I watch them and I get so happy for people when they have their life-changing moment. And so when they do the golden buzzer and anyway, I don't watch a lot of TV, but I do watch those moments, and I just love that. I love it. I run sometimes on the treadmill and watch them. I just watch the best golden buzzer moments and just have tears streaming down my eyes while I'm jogging along because I'm so happy for them. Getting a 2 milk deal did feel a bit like that moment. That's really kind of what it felt like, that kind of golden confetti falling down on you moment. But anyway, if you somehow missed my news, head on over to Kirstie Writes on Instagram and you can hear all about it. And I have also just come back from checking out the new suites. So Journey Beyond Rail has launched the most luxurious suites in Australian train travel, and they've got 2 new suites which will be on both Indian Pacific and the Ghan, and they are called the Aurora and the Australis. And these suites were just incredible. They are much larger than a cruise cabin, which surprised me, given that it's a train. But they have like a beautiful lounge area and two separate, like, the lounge is in the middle, and then they have an ensuite and a bedroom, both with doors closing off. So huge for a train suite, and just beautiful. Those have literally just launched. So I was fortunate enough to go to Adelaide to check them out, and I wrote a story about it, which I'll put the link in the show notes. But that's what I've just been doing. And how about you, Belle?
I've got to say, those they did look absolutely massive, because I've travelled on again, across the Indian Pacific, across to Paris. And I remember feeling like it was like one of those old sort of shit cabins, which everything is tucked into its place. And the bathroom was gorgeous, but tiny. Like it was like just, everything had to fold and snap into the right place. Otherwise, nothing worked. So they look absolutely spectacular. While you were doing that, or actually a couple of days before, I did the most amazing tarmac tour of Melbourne Airport with the Australian Society of Travel Writers. Look, airports are amazing. They're an absolute microcosm. And Melbourne Airport, I did not know this, is the second largest business district in the city outside the CBD. It's incredible. So on this tarmac tour, I stood under an A380, and I have to say my head was not that far from the lowest point on its belly. Like it was just massive. I got a free blow dry from the jet engine that's standing there just, looking like a Celine Dion kind of music video, with all the top lighting and stuff.
Should you have been there when it was actually still turning around?
We did have the safety officers with us at the time who were very closely monitoring the whole thing. And I'm very short, so it would have, I would have just a little blimp for it as it ran out off the tarmac. But it was an Emirates one, which is a little bit tricky. Some of them aren't moving. They they said that the logistics of the tarmac, when the whole Middle East thing, started impacting upon aviation, suddenly, of course, there's planes that can't take off from all over the world. And they're like, where are we going to fit these massive aircraft? So they had to do this jigsaw juggling all around the tarmac, because at one point they had 11 to 13 aircraft that could not travel with the carriers like Emirates and Qatar and Etihad, which is really fascinating. And there's still a couple there. But we also went to the private terminal, which which is where people like Queen Mary of Denmark, love her. Maybe she's my little, oh my God, I want to be Princess Mary. Queen Mary, where she flew in with her husband, who nobody knows about. And Taylor Swift, like when she came visiting, that's where she stayed. And apparently when she got off her private jet aircraft, it flew into, like it taxied into a closed area. And then she set up all of these black tents so that nobody could get a photo of her walking off the plane and going into the private terminal, which has got things like hotel rooms and pilots' rooms and conference facilities. It's just amazing, just that, because you don't want anybody having unauthorized photos. We also found out where all the poo went, because where does all the poo go when it comes off those international planes? It goes to a place that they call the honey pot, which is just like so fascinating. And, we went to the control ops room. But look, I'm going to share one thing that I thought was really interesting about Melbourne Airport, which is its airport assist service, which helps passengers get around the airport. So if you're traveling with somebody who needs a wheelchair or has mobility issues or buggy transfers, they provide these transfers, and it's all a free service, because some of those gates can be up to 1 kilometre long, from where you start. And I remember I was flying to Uluru with my mum, and she had late stage cancer at that time. So she was quite frail. There was no service like that. This is quite a few years ago. If that service had been there, it would have saved us a whole world of difficulty just making that really long effort to the gate. Because when you're at the gate, then the airline takes over. But before that, this service puts that link in from curbside to check in. And I thought it was really great because they've got, they've got things like they plan where the accessible bathrooms are, where the taxi and Uber pickups are. And they've got things like videos on this hub on their website from people with lived experience describing that sort of mobility issues and how you get around the airport. So I'm going to pop a link for that one to share it with you, because that was, interestingly, one of the biggest takeaways I had from this tarmac tour. And it was just brilliant. Like, shout out to Melbourne Airport. It was absolutely fascinating.
Yeah.
If you are a spotter, you can actually jump on their Facebook page, because they have sorry to cut you off there. They have an airport, like a plane spotters Facebook group, and they do actually offer similar tours occasionally. They for people, and you just got to keep an eye out on their Facebook page.
Yeah, amazing. Well, it sounds really interesting, and you're right that that's such an important service to have for people like who are in your mother's situation, and also there's a lot of people with mobility issues. That it's not, so it impacts quite a number of people. And speaking of Melbourne Airport, we have a little reminder that we have an amazing giveaway of one night's accommodation at the Novotel Melbourne Airport for 2 people in a superior room with a full buffet breakfast. So it just takes a few minutes walk from Terminal 4 to get there. And if you're coming to the airport from Country Vic or New South Wales, or if you need just a night's stay, a transit in Melbourne, or you just want to, hang out at the airport, and you want a great night out with a bit of plane spotting, as Belle mentioned earlier, and dinner in the Balcutta restaurant. To enter this, just jump onto our Instagram or Facebook to see the giveaway post. And all you have to do is like the post, make sure you're following us and Novotel Melbourne Airport, and for an extra entry, tag someone that you want to go away with. And yeah, there's more details on our website at theworldawaits.au.
This episode, we have another hot take for you. So these are the episodes that we're doing every 5 weeks or so, where we'll discuss a topical travel event, an issue, or a trend. And this week, we are addressing, well, it's not really the elephant in the room because everybody's talking about it, and that is the war in the Middle East and the impact it's having throughout the world, and for us, of course, particularly in travel. But look, stay with us, because we do have some messages of optimism and some tips for workarounds from both local road trips and international flights.
Yeah, I think in the travel industry, people are just starting to sort of try and avoid it. Particularly, you go to conferences and events, and people just don't want to talk about it as much anymore. Even though it's still fresh, obviously, but because it's just such a ever evolving and challenging situation. So let's just cover off a little bit of the bad news first, and then we can look at some solutions. So as we're recording this, just a matter of days ago, Qatar Airways says it's gradually restoring its flight network, but obviously there's just a lot of flights impacted. So they say, we recognise the situation is unsettling and we're working towards keeping you moving. They are resuming operations once the Civil Aviation Authority obviously says it's safe to do so, which isn't at this stage. So there are a really significant number of flights impacted. And rather than running through all of them, if you go to QatarAirways.com, and we'll put this link in the show notes, there's a flight schedule that you can look at. Emirates is obviously the same. They're operating reduced limited schedule of flights. And it does vary depending on, what city you're in. So services have resumed to some places in Sydney and Melbourne, but a lot of flights, like with Brisbane and Adelaide, have still got extended suspensions. And it's also worth noticing that Smart Traveller has also warned for both Dubai and Doha at the moment to do not travel.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely heartbreaking, isn't it? And as I mentioned at Melbourne Airport, they've still got planes just sitting there that have got nowhere to go, and the whole all over the world, they're juggling to fill space with these stranded aircraft. So last week back here in Australia, Jetstar announced that it's reducing flights between Australia and New Zealand due to the rising cost of jet fuel, which we'll get into later. But there are other workarounds. People are still traveling, people are still getting to Europe. I mean, like, you're heading off in a couple of months' time as well, Kirstie. I mean, but you are going to Rome via Singapore. And what I think this is going to be is it's actually a bit of a bonus for the old ways that we used to travel to Europe before the Middle Eastern hubs, particularly Dubai, first kicked off, and then Abu Dhabi, Qatar, and to a lesser degree Oman, because we used to do that kangaroo route with Qantas, which would jump up through Asia all the way up to London. It'd go in through Singapore. All of those Asian hubs like Singapore, Kuala Lumpur, Hong Kong are all now obviously seeing a lot more traffic as people are doing pretty much anything they can to avoid going through the Middle East, which if you're doing that. And I was reading a really interesting piece by Simon Calder, in the travel editor at The Independent, was saying, it does void your travel insurance claim if you're going through that area knowingly. So I think that there is a benefit for the Asian hubs are definitely seeing that. And also when looking at other airlines, Singapore, we know well, in new starters like Hong Kong Airways, and then also the Chinese carriers too, which have never gone up through there because, I mean, we've got, as we've got family in Cairo. One of the easiest ways, or, the ways that people are looking to go there is with the Chinese carriers and going up through China, doing stopovers in places like Shanghai, and then straight up, which have got direct flights running up to Cairo, which is actually not been affected. I mean, it is being affected because people are saying, oh, I'm not going to go to Cairo because it's too close to the action. But its Smart Traveller rating is still the same as places like Paris in terms of, how it's in terms of safety. So, which is an absolute heartbreaker because unfortunately, the term the Middle East is a really broad umbrella term,
Yes.
and just covers that entire area. So I think Chinese carriers are definitely going to have their day. Traditionally, they've been absolute bargain basement prices, astonishingly well priced to do even flatbed up to those areas. Those prices are not necessarily there at the moment because now, of course, supply and demand. And as somebody said to me, who knows better than how to price gouge than an airline?
That's true. And
Actually, I said, well, I think the petrol pumps, the petrol stations, are actually very avid students when it comes to price gouging as well. They're both as bad at each other.
Yeah. And it's a good point that you make, that when people talk about the Middle East, they always include, those parts of Africa. And it's like, it just gets all lumped into one area. It's also worth noticing that the ACCC says it's closely monitoring Australia's airline industry in response, and it says whether consumers are entitled to a refund or other remedy is going to depend on your individual circumstances, obviously. So it's good to know that they're actually monitoring it, but I mean, the reality is that, you know, at the end of the day, they sort of tell you to go back to your airline too. So they say consumer guarantees in the Australian consumer law are unlikely to apply if the airline delays or cancels a flight due to the actions of a third party, such as government closing its airspace or implementing flight restrictions. So in those circumstances, you know, again, it all just comes down to the conditions of your booking, really. And airlines may still be required to provide a remedy under the consumer guarantees if the reason for the delay is not due to the actions of a third party. So this is all just grey areas. I mean, at the end of the day, this is the reality we're all facing at the moment, right, in regards to having conversations with your airlines and having good travel insurance. Because if you've got, I mean, we, like you said earlier, we've booked Singapore Airlines to go from Melbourne to Rome, and in September, and yeah, we just made sure we got really good travel insurance, obviously, to ensure that we're covered, not just reliant on the airline coming through, which doesn't always happen, but yeah, making sure you've got good travel insurance so that you are going to get, you know, be able to either rebook or cancel and be compensated for your flight.
Absolutely. And look, I think that this sort of situation as well is one of the reasons why, if you're doing those multi-flight itineraries, I would be very reluctant to split it up amongst different carriers. So where you could stay on the same carrier, because if one flight in your itinerary knocks off or changes, then they are by law required to fix all of the knock-on flights as well. Like flying back to, when I had that horrific event coming back with Qatar from Bulgaria. It turned out to be a 3-flight event, and it took me 72 hours to get home. But every time I got off the flight, I know 3 days. Like I did a stopover in Qatar. I had another one in Singapore. Didn't even know I was going to Singapore, but I did find that Qatar was amazing. Every time I came off the flight, they had tickets and a hotel booking for me. So they were amazing. But if you're jumping between flights, if you're jumping between airlines, you don't have that point that you're buying point to point.
And the other thing is, if you do that, do it through a travel advisor, and even better, book your flights through a travel advisor anyway, because the travel advisor is then going to come up with a solution for you. Like, that's their job. That's where they are absolutely gold, and that if you're not booking it yourself, that the travel advisor will do that. But there's some other big impacts outside of flights, so let's get onto those, Belle.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, of course, the biggest is we're seeing at home, outside the human cost of all of this is the rise in fuel prices, which of course is having a detrimental effect on local road trips. Look, I fill up the car on a personal level. I'm lucky that I work from home most of the time. The school run, don't even avoid that. We try really hard to keep our footprint quite low in this household. But then, imagine running a farm or a business, and then in the travel space, if you're going on holidays with a caravan or a motorhome, it is an enormous blow to your travel budget. And so that one area that we see is going to be hit really hard is Australia's drive tourism market. I was up in the Northern Territory last year driving around the Red Centre, and they had said it was one of the pillars of their tourism is drive tourism. And that's in a region that is already has fuel, like it's notorious for having fuel that is priced well above what you'll get in the cities and the regional towns. So we're seeing that type of tourism coming to a screeching halt as people reassess their budgets. And, I've been listening on local radio around Australia where people are saying, we're up in Broome at the moment. We were going to do this trip, but we just decided to wait it out and stay in this area for another couple of weeks to see what's happening, or just, edging their way down, just, to negotiate what is otherwise going to be an absolutely crippling fuel budget that, may have increased by 50%.
Yeah. And also for people who are heading over to New Zealand, like I was just there driving up the east coast of the South Island recently, and and now the fuel prices over there have gone up to like $4 a litre. So, I mean, if you're over there, and I know some people who are going over there to hire a motorhome, which is really expensive. Like, you're paying hundreds and hundreds of dollars just for a tiny little motorhome anyway, let alone the petrol on top of that. They're actually now considering changing their itinerary to travel less, to drive less, and also to go from hotel or motel to motel because of to reduce the costs of that trip. So, if you are planning on some local road travel, there are some apps that can help you. So Petrol Spy Australia is a really popular one, and that's really highly rated on all the app stores for finding cheap fuel. And it's got user submitted prices and live data, so that's a really good one. Another one's called Fuel Radar, which offers an interactive map, and that's to spot the best bargains, and it's also color coded by price. And also go to your motoring club website, so and apps. So around the country, obviously there's RACV in Victoria, but NRMA in New South Wales and RAC all across the country, other parts of other states too, that have apps. And another big thing to watch actually here is going to be, and this is going to be the big word that we're going to hear a lot of soon, is fuel surcharges. So this is an additional charge that the airlines are charging on fares to compensate for the loss of fuel costs caused by rising oil. So already quite a number of airlines are actually doing this. They've announced that they are adding fuel surcharges, which basically just means your travel is going to be more expensive. So Cathay Pacific, Qantas Air New Zealand, they're all doing it. And it'll impact more broadly travel too, because, for instance, if you are going on a boat experience or a boat excursion or a coach or even train where it's diesel operated, those journeys are all going to be impacted, and so travel prices are going to be impacted significantly by that. So you might want to consider what your travel choices are in regards to that fuel surcharge, and obviously it's something that's being monitored pretty closely.
Yeah, look, I think that those fuel apps are great. I use Petrol Spy at the best of times. And then when I was coming home from the airport back from South Africa a few weeks ago, the taxi driver was like, "Can you get on petrol?" While he's driving, he's like, "Can you get on Petrol Spy and tell me where the cheap place is to fill up? Because I'm going to have to fill up." He was like, "Buy yourself the biggest, 1,000-liter thing and go and fill it up at the petrol station," which I didn't actually do. But he was telling me, and that was only a couple of days after. He was like, "Everyone's doing it." So now, of course, we can see that everyone's doing it. Look, this is the time really to stay local. I mean, we know this from the drill of our COVID days. It is time to start exploring our own backyard. So in a few weeks, like you and I, Kirstie, will be heading over to the Bellarine Peninsula, which is only 17 minutes by ferry from the centre of Melbourne. And we're going over there to check out its newest old hotel, the glorious Queenscliff. And I think this is a time for the regional tourism boards to look at their public transport links, such as travelling by train to a destination rather than driving, and finding good local hotel deals. I do love a good staycay in a city hotel anyway, don't you?
Yes, of course. I mean, look, to be honest, I'd rather be overseas, but actually, I'm not going to disagree with you there. No, I actually would rather be traveling in a plane. I love planes. I'm obsessed with jumping on a plane and going somewhere new. So, no, I'd rather be overseas.
I mean, if you're talking like just to break the routine and stuff, just jumping out, staying in the city, going in and having dinner somewhere that you wouldn't normally go to, and just going out for a little drink and stuff like that. I find it. Look, of course I would rather be schlepping around Finland, in the snowy lakes on the Russian border, of course, but having a little staycay is not a bad thing. And look, I think this is, I think that it's going to be a boom for countries that are considered to be very safe. We hear of people doing anything that they can to avoid transiting through the Arabian Gulf. So we're looking at safe haven city countries such as Air New Zealand in the Pacific, Fiji, Bali, of course, but then a little further afield, Vanuatu and Samoa, which are serviced by Virgin Virgin Australia, and the wildly underappreciated Tonga, which has flights by Qantas and Fiji Airways. Go there, swim with the whales. They're just really low key, beautiful places. Tonga is just a bit weird. But I think this is going to be a boom time for Asia as well. Japan is already eating with Australians, and Vietnam is definitely the flavour of the year for affordable holidays. But if you're on a tighter budget, I would not overlook Malaysia, which is a fabulous value destination. It's serviced by Air Asia, Malaysian, and then Air Asia, which is once again one of the best low-cost carriers in the world, according to recent Skytrax awards. It's such a great little airline. It hubs out of Kuala Lumpur and flies into 4 destinations, including Sydney and Melbourne. And we're also very fortunate to have the ultra low cost carrier Vietjet flying here too, because even in their business class, they are just such great offerings. And I think more people are tuning into those as well.
Yeah, look, we did look at going in the June, July school holidays to Vanuatu or Samoa, and both were pretty reasonably priced actually. We are actually staying closer to home and going to Port Douglas, but that was for another reason. But yeah, but no, I was very keen to do that, and it's a good time to look at doing that now. And for those who are looking at going to Europe or to Dubai or and going via those Middle East hubs, I recently actually had a chat with a core Middle East CEO, Duncan O'Rourke, who's based in Dubai, and I was talking to him for Carry On, and I'll put a link to that in the show notes too. But he was saying it's really important to remember that the region has shown lots of resilience and they remain confident in the long-term outlook and in the strength of the market. So to recover. So he was saying that, they're being agile and adaptable and just working hand in hand with their teams and owners to try and have some sort of operational stability. I mean, obviously he pointed to the fact that safety and security is the biggest issue right now. But the good news is for everyone is, things will bounce back. I mean, the travel industry is really resilient, and we've all seen that. And interestingly, actually, at the recent Virtuoso Australia and New Zealand Forum, which Matt Leadham actually was there for Carry On recently, and he was telling us and wrote a story about this too, about how they did a live survey during this showcase, and it showed that only 7% of clients are cancelling travel. So that's a really recent live snapshot into the habit of what's happening and how Australian and New Zealand luxury travellers are looking at travel. I mean, it's obviously not entirely reflective of the entire market because it's the luxury market, but it's positive for the industry because for us as travellers, we want to see these experiences and hotels come through the other side. So if a lot of the people at that end aren't cancelling, and luxury is a big word, it covers a broad market. So if a lot of those people aren't cancelling their travel, then that's got to be good for all of us.
Hey, Kirstie. When I was in South Africa recently, I used a Saili to stay in contact, even when I was on safari, so I could share snaps from my phone straight to social media. I mean, look, I've got to say, I did try to stay in the moment, but sometimes it was just too good not to share.
Yeah, exciting. So was it easy to use?
Yeah, I'm on an Android phone, but they're also compatible with iPhones. And before I left home, I just downloaded the Saili SIM, chose the 5 gig plan for South Africa, and I activated the SIM in the SIM manager settings. So when I touched down, the eSIM was ready to use.
And also, you were telling me that these Saili plans are in more than 200 destinations around the world too. So you can buy a single country eSIM or a regional plan, such as a Europe plan, which starts at about $6 and they work in 35 countries.
Yeah, look, I thought it was great because I didn't have to log into public networks in cafes and airports, and I didn't have to do the dance with dodgy SIM card sellers at the airport either. It's created by NordVPN, so I felt confident about the security features, and its ad blocker stops you wasting data on unauthorized pop-up ads as well.
And to buy your eSIM and do what Belle did, simply download the Saili app from the App Store on your phone and use our code, The World Awaits, at checkout, because then you'll get 15% off your first purchase. And to find out more, you could have a look at the show notes and go to theworldawaits.au. Our tip this week is for aviation geeks, as we're sharing the best runway rooms on Australasian airports. So if the sight of a plane taking off gets your blood pumping, this is the list for you.
Yeah, this idea for the tip came about because, as you know, I was recently at the Novotel Melbourne Airport recording last week's interview. And while we were doing the interview, my guest, Toby Venus from the Points Hack podcast, kept getting distracted by the planes taking off. He's like, blah, blah, blah. Oh, there's an A380. And we're like, okay, we might just have to edit that bit out. Hot tip, though, the best views are actually from its sister hotel, the Ibis Styles, which is on a different wing to the Novotel, facing out onto the tarmac. So book the upper levels of that hotel if you are, like us, total av geek.
I have to say, I love it when people are that passionate about their jobs that they, that they live and breathe it. Because good on him. I mean, he's obviously excited about planes. And this also comes our list comes hard on the news that the Pullman Brisbane Airport was crowned best airport hotel in Australia Pacific by the annual Skytrax World Airport Awards. So it's actually the fifth time that hotel has taken out the title in the past 6 years. And if you're there to spot planes, the best rooms are obviously in the two highest levels.
Yeah, it's second best. The second place was behind the Pullman Brisbane, was another Melbourne Airport institution, the Park Royal Melbourne Airport, which is that one linked by air bridges to the terminal. It even it's actually got a plane spotting package, because not all of them, it's kind of odd, not all of them talk up their plane spotting rooms. So this package includes breakfast, a late checkout at midday, yay, and they even throw in a pair of binoculars so you don't miss any of the action, and you take the binoculars home with you as a souvenir after your stay.
And because I also love to add in a Kiwi angle where I can, not only do the rooms at the Pullman Airport, Auckland Airport have runway views, but the Te Kahu restaurant and bar on level 9 of the hotel is also great for plane spotters. So the hotel's only 100 metres outside the Auckland International Airport, and it also actually came in third place in those Skytrax awards that we were just talking about. And another one in Christchurch, the Novotel Christchurch Airport, which actually came in fifth place, has rooms with direct views of the planes as well. And you also get a backdrop of the Alps on a good day. And even if you're not staying, the restaurant also has good views, which everywhere in the South Island does. And staying in the Pullman family, they'll open the Pullman Perth Airport next year, and that's the first hotel within the Perth Airport precinct.
Have you stayed at that Christchurch hotel, Kirstie? Because it looks absolutely gorgeous from the photos.
Look, I haven't, but let me tell you very quickly about a couple of terrible experiences I've had. I had like a faulty towels experience actually in Sydney at a Sydney airport hotel, where literally the people in the restaurant were like falling over top of each other, and the room was just feral, is about the only way I can describe it. And in Christchurch just recently, my husband, oh my God, bless him, but every time I leave him to book something, seriously, it's quite often a disaster. So I let him book he booked an airport hotel because I was flying in really late because I was coming in from that travel trade event IMM in Sydney, and I was getting in at like midnight or something, and so we just thought I'll stay in the airport hotel. Oh my gosh, he booked this place, and there was like a pod. It wasn't a room, it was like a pod, right? And when I pulled back the bedding, there were some hairs on there, which, let me tell you, did not look like they came off someone's head. And I just said to Dave, have you actually, seriously, we may have to just go stay somewhere else. But it was so late that, we had a really early start the next day. We had a wedding the next day. We were going to his family's home to get ready and catch up with the family. So anyway, we had no choice. We had to stay there. But let me just leave it there. And yes, not a great choice if you're staying. But so go to the Pullman. That's oh no, it's not the Pullman. Go to the Novotel Christchurch Airport. That one is a lovely hotel, I'm sure. Even I have never stayed there, and it looks really lovely, and that's your best bet.
And probably doesn't have any pubic hair all over the place. If you are in Adelaide, the Atura Adelaide Airport is so cute. It's within the airport precinct. Choose the rooms on level 6 and 7 for the best views of the tarmac. If you don't know the Atura brand, it is the fun little sister of the QT hotels. And I did a dummy booking in their 4-person rooms, and they come in at about $250 a night. And they do actually mark their plane spotting rooms on their website. And in Canberra, the Vibe Hotel Canberra Airport, again, book the top 2 levels. They actually recommend a deluxe room on level 5 or the 1-bedroom apartment on level 6. And that hotel is circular, so the room orientations do vary. And a hot tip, if you're staying on a Friday night, they have their wind down Fridays with a 2-hour happy hour and a platter of local snacks. And if you're in Darwin, the Novotel Darwin Airport, which has had a $41 million upgrade over the past few years, looks over the runway from its upper floors. But yes, you might be able to see those 787s and the A350s. But what Darwin has that others don't have is military aircraft, because the RAP base in Darwin shares the runway with the international airport. So you've got to keep your eyes open For F-35A Lightning II stealth fighters, you might see MV-22 Ospreys, which are those double-headed helicopters from the US Marine Corps. And even when they're hosting military exercises, you might spot the F-22 Raptors or even a B-52 bomber.
And in Sydney, the Ridges Sydney Airport in Terminal 1 is only 181 steps. Wow, I guess it depends on your steps, how wide how big your long your legs are. But to the international check-in counter, roughly 181 steps, and it has a dedicated plane spotting area and rooms. While outside the terminals, don't forget newcomer Moxie Sydney Airport, which has affordable rooms aimed at families and groups with bunks and connecting rooms with runway views. But this is really cool too, this hotel. It's got a really good look and it's new. So don't worry about pubic hair there. And this is an interesting hotel because it has Sunday music sessions and also a Tuesday trivia night, which starts on April the 14th, and a complimentary shuttle to the airport or Mascot train station for quick connection into the city.
Next week, we are going to Afghanistan. Well, virtually. I am interviewing a guest I have long wanted to bring to you. His name is James Wilcox, and he's the founder of Untamed Borders, which is a travel company specializing in what they describe as interesting and usually inaccessible destinations. And we are going to be joined by Afghani tour guide Fatima Haderi, who runs virtual tours of her beloved country. So if you are as fascinated by Central Asia as I am, tune in.
I can't wait for that. And I love that they do virtual tours too. It'll be really interesting to see that. And we'd love it if you follow us on our socials. You'll find us at The World Awaits podcast on Instagram, Facebook and LinkedIn. And feel free to drop us a line at hello@theworldawaits.au. Or if you're enjoying this episode, please give us a rating and review.
That's a wrap for The World Awaits this week. Click to subscribe anywhere you listen to your favourite pods.
Thanks for listening. See you next week.